Florida is a state of contradiction, like so many in this country. It has places that are beautiful. It has places that are not that. It has places that invite and encourage tourism, while simultaneously discouraging people from ever wanting to visit. And it has some of the loveliest individuals you'll ever meet, alongside some of the most outlandish humans you'll ever encounter. On one end of the extreme, you have your salt-of-the-earth, well-adjusted adults who only use the left lane for passing, tip generously, and live by the virtue of staying out of other people's business. And on the other end, you have the people with more DUIs than teeth, crushing a stack of Bud Lights they already spent money on, in protest over their eyes being forced to perceive primary colors, emptying their Desert Eagle into the fifth hurricane of the season as they shape an identity around being from America's tax write-off. But somewhere in the middle of those two extremes exists Florida Man. The bane of automotive existence, an absolute menace of the open road, who probably shouldn't even be driving in the first place. So, my friends, allow me to share with you some of the most ridiculous automotive-related Florida Man stories you'll ever come across. This is RCR Stories, the Legend of Florida Man. So our first category is going to be about stolen cars, and this one is shockingly recent. A couple is fast asleep in their Tallahassee home when they're awoken at 5 a.m. by the sound of a crash. The husband looks outside his window to see a man in an orange hoodie fumbling around in the darkness with something very large. Parked behind him in the middle of the road is a forklift. But this isn't a construction crew getting an early start on the day. This is Florida Man, and he's currently escaping on a forklift that he apparently stole from a school for the purpose of stealing an ATM, which he successfully did, got it on the forklift and everything. Yet, in the process of making the world's slowest getaway, Florida Man lost control, and the ATM fell off of the forklift. Desperate, he tried to push the ATM down the street like a hockey puck, destroying the residential street he was driving down, and likely causing more damage than any of the money in that ATM could possibly cover. Now, the couple called the police, and once law enforcement arrived, Florida Man tried to run, which is at least more sensible than trying to initiate a high-speed chase in a damn forklift. But ultimately, it didn't take them long to arrest him and slap him with a litany of charges, including, of course, grand theft. But I guess the silver lining here is that at least the guy wasn't violent. The homeowner who called 911 would later tell reporters, quote, "I prefer this kind of crime over violent ones, but I think the guy was lucky that OSHA wasn't around to see his blatant disregard of workplace safety." End quote. Now there's a sensible Floridian. But this next guy, not so much. On October 27th, a Florida man trespassed on private property in Lee County, wearing nothing but a pair of gray sweatpants. A construction worker tried to stop the man from breaking into a shed on the property, so what did this Florida man do? Well, this guy noticed that the construction worker had left his Nissan SUV unlocked with the keys inside. So the dude jumped in, hit the gas, and went barreling straight towards this Good Samaritan, who hopped out of the path of the speeding car at the last second, GTA style. The construction worker got on the phone with 911 while the car thief burst through the gates of this private property and made his escape. Now, one would think if he were smart, this thief would ditch the car at the earliest opportunity and continue on foot. However, while police were initially answering the construction worker's phone call, a different call came into the Lee County Sheriff's Office declaring that there was some weird guy wandering on our property and he's only wearing sweatpants and it looks like he's on something, or possibly all of the things, and he just ran into a porta potty, so can you come and check this out? So the police went out to the location, and here comes Florida Man with a wooden stake in each hand like Abraham Van Helsing. Where did he get them? Probably lawn signs, you know? Why did he have them? Let's not find out, okay? Oh, and he didn't have his sweatpants on anymore, so there was also that. Now, in this Sunshine State game of rock, paper, scissors, taser always beats wooden stake, so the thief was subdued, arrested, and charged with grand theft for stealing the Nissan. And while all of this is 1000% not the fault of that construction worker, there is an odd sort of irony that, in attempting to stop the car thief from causing property damage, he left his own car unlocked, resulting in the car thief causing $4,000 in property damage during his escapade. Of course, one can only wonder why on earth the guy would do this. I mean, it doesn't seem like the initial plan was to steal a car. Although you'd have to think the plan was to steal something, right? But then, the motives of Florida Man are as unknowable as new math. Well, to me anyway. Okay, so imagine your car is stolen. It's your car. You paid money for it. You've maintained it. You've even modified it. Maybe you've added a shifter, a nice aftermarket shifter. Maybe you've straight piped it. Maybe you've had it boosted. Maybe you've had it lifted. Either way, it's yours. Which is why it's so offensive when some jackwagon comes along with a crowbar and a sense of entitlement, and now you have to take the bus to work. But no sooner do you report it to law enforcement than you get a phone call the very next day from a man who claims to have your car. And not only does he have your car, he tells you that you can have it back for the comfortable price of $200. That's what happened to a man in Daytona Beach in December of 2009. And while you could argue that $200 is an amazing price for a used car in any economy, this is obviously untrue when it's a car you already own. And since this car is a Nissan Altima, I'm sure there are some who would tell you it's not even worth that. Which I'm not sure I'd agree with necessarily, although if we're talking about the Sentra, then past the haterade, I need the electrolytes. As police would discover, after stealing the Altima, the thief would find the owner's cell phone in the car and use it to call his home line. Well, I'm presuming he used it to call the owner's home line, because the alternative is that this Altima owner had two cell phones and the phone number for one was saved in the other in the random event that he had to call himself. Either way, the thief demanded $200, and I suppose the relief here is that he didn't ask a higher price, although at a certain point, and depending on the car's condition, it might have been more financially advantageous to just call insurance and claim it as a loss. Now, the owner was able to get the car back, although there's no further information on if the suspect was ever apprehended. The article I read suggests that he's still at large, but it's hard to imagine that he didn't get tagged for something in the last 16 years, if for no other reason than that I can't imagine a criminal this stupid would be able to avoid the law for that long. But even that car thief wasn't as misguided as this one, and that's being charitable. So charitable I could probably deduct that comment from my taxes. A Lake City, Florida man stole a car off of a Chrysler Dodge Jeep dealership lot, and then tried to trade the car in a few days later. To the exact same dealership, oh, for crying out loud. I guess it never occurred to the man that they would run the VIN and match it to the car that just got swiped from their inventory. But what makes this even dumber is that he was on camera stealing the car. Because unless it's run by the sort of incompetent 56% APR charging Pontiac rebadging morons that run Kunkelman Chevrolet, GMC, Audi, Suzuki, Tesla, GMC, Duesenberg, GMC, Subaru, Duesenberg again, a car dealership is likely going to have a CCTV system, and they will catch you on camera. Even if it's not in 4K, it's going to make life way harder for your lawyer. So the man was arrested and charged with grand theft, in addition to dealing in stolen property, because it's bad enough you stole a whole car, but it's another matter entirely to try and sell it back to the people you stole it from in person. This next story probably belongs in the car theft category, but I'm throwing this in a category I like to call balls over brains, because you've got to have more balls than brain cells to try any of this. Case in point, over this summer, on July 4th actually, a 57-year-old Florida man pulled off the most brazen heist since the Algar Ferrari got stolen and wrecked in Philadelphia. Reportedly, this man, who is a few years shy of retirement age, decided to steal a trolley from the Conch-Tor Train Company in Key West, Florida. And he did this by tricking an employee of the company into giving him a tour by running the old house tour scam. You know, the one where a stranger knocks on your door and says, "Hey, I used to live here, mind if I have a look around for old time's sake?" And then they case the house to come back and steal all your pearls and copper wiring and your cans of Who hash, or whatever it is criminals steal in 2025. Same deal here, more or less, as Florida man claimed he used to work for the Conch-Tor Train Company and wanted to take a tour down memory lane, and this good-natured employee, God bless him, he indulged this guy. Now, stealing the trolley right out from under the employee was already ballsy enough, but what inflates those nuts to grapefruit proportions is that the guy didn't even take this trolley for a joyride. Well, not just a joyride anyway. He used it to actually pick up passengers. Basically, the guy stole this trolley so he could spend the day pretending he had a job. This is like stealing a taxi cab in GTA and using it to actually pick people up, which, to be fair, is an entirely legitimate way to play that game. But what's wilder than all of this put together is the fact that he didn't just do this on the 4th of July. He did this on his birthday. The police were able to recover the trolley undamaged, and they were later able to track the suspect down. And he swore that he didn't steal this trolley, he only borrowed it. An eccentric excuse, to be sure, but even if the police somehow felt like letting this all slide for his birthday, that option went all the way out the window once they found a glass smoking pipe in his car. And for the purposes of keeping this video relatively ad-friendly, let's just say it wasn't used to cosplay Tom Bombadil if he lived in the Florida Keys. The man was booked, charged with possession, and yes, Grand Theft Auto. If convicted, he probably won't get to actually play GTA 6 with the amount of time he could potentially get. Then again, if Rockstar keeps pushing this game back, who's to say any of us ever will? For what it's worth, I have March 23rd, 2027 in the pool. Mark it down. Now, maybe I should have named this category Age Doesn't Always Equal Wisdom, because a 56-year-old Florida man drove a golf cart through a Walmart in the town of Gibsonton and allegedly hit some people with it. This all started when the man drove a golf cart right up to the entrance of Walmart's liquor department, which I didn't realize was a thing, since I live in Pennsylvania where liquor sales are limited to government-controlled stores known as Fine Wine and Spirits, where a handle of Vladimir is at shin level and all the good hooch requires tippy toes. Now, why would this guy do something like this? Well, it was a brazen escalation of Karen-like behavior. This man wanted to talk to a manager and refused to leave until he could, but once police arrived, He decided to just go for broke and accelerate into the Walmart itself, damn near running people over in the process, which honestly sounds like a pretty typical day in any Walmart in the greater Reading area. I love my hometown really, but we're basically the Florida of the North. Of course, in this instance, the guy actually did hit a few people throughout his little rampage, although I think hitting someone with a golf cart and actively running somebody over with same are two completely different things. But either way, he caused damage and injuries before crashing into the checkout area. And while none of his victims had to be taken to the hospital, the golf cart road warrior did. And I would imagine even if he didn't have any injuries, it still would have been a good idea just to get his head checked. I couldn't find any details for why the man chose to do this specifically, but needless to say, he was eventually charged with trespass, and oh yeah, a bunch of counts for all those people he allegedly hit. Allegedly. I said it, okay? God, I hate being a YouTuber sometimes. In February of 2024, the sheriff's office in Volusia County, Florida, arrested a 49-year-old man who drove around a paid toll gate with clear "Do Not Enter" signage in order to go drive his truck on a beach that had been closed due to high tides, at which point he quickly entered the find out stage as the truck got swallowed by the waves. When the man was confronted by police, he claimed, and I quote, "It's not my fault the truck don't surf." End quote. And hey, fair. This looks like either a Tacoma or a Tundra, and while we praise Toyota a lot, not even their engineers would make a surfing double cab. Now naturally, in attempting to defend his decision to drive on a closed beach, the Florida man would tell the officer that he thought he was in England. I don't buy that he actually thought he was in England. But if the goal was to annoy the officer, the man clearly succeeded. When the guy asked the officer if he could get in trouble for what he'd just done, the officer responded, quote, Yeah, jail time if need be. End quote. But ultimately, the guy got off with the relatively light sentence of paying a $200 bond plus the beach's vehicular access fee, which he didn't pay when he went around the toll gate. And you know, I really didn't think Dave Chappelle was telling the truth about the effectiveness of the whole "I didn't know I couldn't do that" defense. But here we are. Ugh. And now we move on to my favorite category, and one that could have probably included that last story, actually. It's bizarre excuses, where the crime itself is less notable than the rationale for committing it. So in 2015, my local news station, 6ABC, actually picked up the story of a Florida man who was arrested for dancing on top of a police car, which in itself is a dumb thing to do, even if I'm sure plenty of Philadelphians did it when the Eagles won the Super Bowl last year, among many other things that are likely to become family lore that we just never talk about in mixed company. And Chiefs fans. But what makes this truly bizarre is the man's justification. After dancing for 6 uninterrupted minutes, the man came down by using the windshield like a slide, which resulted in him breaking off one of the wiper blades. Police arrested and questioned the man, and his excuse for doing what he did was vampires. Yes, he claimed he was being threatened by vampires and needed help from the one, the only, the Sheriff of Nottingham? Yes, Robin Hood's ops. Not even Robin Hood himself. He wanted the guy played by Alan Rickman in the 90s to roll up with that garlic and silver. Although honestly, he probably could have used help from the Key West, Florida man and his wooden stakes. I'm not even sure why he thought dancing on a police car would summon the Sheriff of Nottingham. Does he have a reputation for being summoned by dance? But okay, from an empath's perspective, let's allow for the possibility that this man had some type of neurodivergence that made this behavior sensible to him. I don't think we can allow the same kind of grace to our next Florida man. because that definitely was not the case for a 69-year-old Vero Beach, Florida man who was arrested in June of 2018 for DUI and driving without a license. The guy told law enforcement that while, yes, he had been drinking, he hadn't been drinking and driving. No, he only sipped on his bourbon at stop signs and traffic lights, never while the car was in motion, so technically, you guys can't arrest me for a DUI. And this is like the time my college roommate got wasted in downtown State College and tried to ride his bicycle back home to the frat house that neither of us were members of, but passed out before he could even get on the bike, and so the police found him outside Uncle Chen's Chinese food, on the ground next to his bicycle, and thought to write him up for it, except they couldn't prove he'd ever gotten on the bike. Now, how he didn't get a punkin' drublick, I'll never know. But what makes the story of this 69-year-old Florida man even more ridiculous is that he would tell law enforcement that he's never even had a valid Florida driver's license. So even if he hadn't been drinking at all, he was still going to get booked. And he probably never would have been stopped by police in the first place if he hadn't allegedly been acting a fool at a McDonald's drive-thru by just constantly tapping the rear bumper of the car in front of him. And considering how many lawbreakers end up in jail over some nonsense they pulled at Mickey D's, maybe they should just start deputizing the employees. Our next category is weird wildlife. The wildlife isn't weird, of course, but rather the people in the wildlife's orbit, because we can never really just leave Mother Nature alone, it seems. And this next story feels uniquely Floridian, but also super rare in the sense that it's a Florida woman rather than a Florida man. In May 2019, a police deputy spotted a truck running a stop sign at 3:15 a.m. in the southwest city of Punta Gorda. Driving the truck was a 23-year-old man with a 26-year-old woman in the passenger seat, and it was a fairly routine traffic stop until the deputy asked to see what was in the woman's backpack. And inside were 41 turtles, whom I can only imagine weren't being collected to train as ninjas. But I don't even think the most grizzled Florida deputy would have anticipated what happened next. When asked if she had anything else, the woman reached into her pants and pulled out a 12-inch alligator, just a foot-long scaly boy. Suddenly, a simple traffic stop had escalated into an investigation involving the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, since obviously they weren't going to be allowed to keep these creatures. Now, their explanation was that they were out searching for frogs and snakes, so if that's true, they didn't even appear to find what they were looking for. And forgive me for being outside of the Floridian cultural loop, but can anyone explain why they would want to go find frogs and snakes? I mean, is it really just as simple as them wanting to resell these creatures in some way? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I don't know. Just think, all this commotion because they couldn't be bothered to stop at a stop sign. And I get it, it's 3 a.m, you think nobody's around, but it's literally the easiest law in the world to follow. Just stop at a stop sign, man. And yet, because say it with me now, there is always an and yet. The alligator files don't end there, as a Florida man was taken into custody in Palm Beach County in October 2015 for allegedly throwing an alligator through a Wendy's drive-thru. The man allegedly just ordered a large soft drink, pulled up to the window, and then yoked an alligator into the kitchen. Now, luckily, nobody was hurt, but it still landed this moron a charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Because what is an alligator if not nature's pearl-handled revolver? Dude was also ordered to stay away from all Wendy's, although I'm not sure how you could possibly enforce that. Like, if this guy wants a Frosty and a Baconator, he's gonna find a way to get it. Now, as investigators would discover, this alligator wasn't the guy's pet or anything like that. He literally just found it walking on the side of the road. Although why the gator was crossing the road in the first place, I'll leave up to middle schoolers to figure out. But ultimately, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission repossessed the alligator and released it into a nearby canal. And that's about the only sensible thing that happened in this entire story. You ever want a car so badly you had a public crash out over not being able to have it? For our final category, we're taking a look at car crashes and crash outs that happen for some really stupid reasons. So back in March, a 20-year-old Florida man entered a Gainesville BMW dealership with the hopes of leaving in a brand new M4 CS. But the dream evaporated like the top notes of a cheap cologne when they ran his credit and found that this kid didn't even have the credit to finance the dream of owning this car, much less the opportunity to actually test drive it. So this Florida man decided to respond in a thoroughly reasonable way. After failing to steal the keys on his way out, he hopped into his car, circled the lot a few times, then decided to hammer on the gas and ram his car right into the showroom floor. He then got out of his car and proceeded to search for the keys to the M4. So you, watching this right now, you who think you're going too far for your dream car just because you called off work to make sure you could be around to sign for delivery on those adjustable coilovers, no, you haven't gone too far, not by a long shot. Because you didn't destroy a BMW dealership to get the car you wanted. And after all that, this guy didn't even get to drive the car anyway because he couldn't find the keys. As it turns out, even if you think you know where the keys are on your way out of a building, their location is obviously going to change once you destroy the place they were being kept. So instead of escaping in his own car, the guy made off on foot, and was subsequently caught and slapped with criminal mischief charges, and presumably some sort of liability for all the damage he caused. But funnily enough, paying off the estimated $60,000 worth of damage he caused would still put him less than halfway to the $129,000 price tag on that M4 that caused this entire crash out to begin with. As ridiculous as that crash out was, I don't think it's as ridiculous as the car crash for our final story. A story that should probably be filed under, well, I put it in this category because I didn't really know where else to put it. It's another Florida woman's story, but with a bizarre twist, even by the standards of Florida. A woman was driving a Ford Thunderbird in Monroe County, Florida, when the Chevrolet SUV in front of her slowed down in preparation to make a turn. The woman driving the Thunderbird didn't react in time and slammed into the Chevy's rear end. And hey, I get it. It could happen to anybody, particularly in this period where the epidemic of really slow turns is getting out of hand. I know I talk about it a lot. It's my old man complaint. You don't have to come to a complete stop just to make a turn. You shouldn't go blazing into corners like you're competing in toge either, but for crying out loud, be reasonable. But okay, the fender bender isn't the weird part here. You see, the woman driving the Thunderbird was on her way to see her boyfriend, and decided now would be a good time to shave. And not just shave anywhere, but shave down there. Yes, this woman decided to shave her privates while driving. And if you're wondering how a person steers while shaving their legs or shaving a place that gets even less of the Sunshine State's sunshine, well, you don't. The woman was in the driver's seat, but she wasn't the one holding the wheel steady. No, that would be the passenger. Her ex-husband. Her ex-husband was accompanying her to meet her boyfriend and held the wheel steady while she shaved in preparation for that meeting. Now look, I'm all for exes getting along, but this... it kind of looks like one of those situations where there's a chair prepared for him in the corner of the motel, although no shade if it is. You like what you like. And as I always say, as long as nobody's getting hurt or breaking the law, it's none of my damn business. But then, people did get hurt here. Not just the Chevy passengers, but the ex-husband too. He had sustained an injury to the chest when his airbag deployed. Yet interestingly, the driver's airbag hadn't deployed. And this may have actually saved him from suffering an even worse injury because, he was leaning over to hold on to the steering wheel. It's a weird position. But either way, the couple allegedly made a run for it in the Thunderbird. A drive for it? And the reason is because this woman was supposedly already in hot water with the law. The woman was said to have been only a day removed from being convicted of a DUI and driving on a suspended license. Oh, and let's not paper over the fact that this was allegedly the 6th time that she'd had her license revoked, which, at that point, would you not just lose your license permanently or get put in jail so you can't drive again? Yet here she was, back on the streets, driving on a suspended brain. And this ex-husband, man, I don't know what their relationship was like, and there's no real excuse for fleeing the scene of a crime. But I'm having a hard time not feeling pity for this guy, since when the police finally caught up to the duo, the woman had somehow, some way, talked him into getting in the driver's seat to take the rap for everything, allegedly. And he just went along with it. But of course it didn't work. The woman was subsequently charged with reckless driving, leaving the scene of an accident, and driving with a revoked license, and also driving with no insurance. The ex-husband, meanwhile, wasn't charged at all. Understandably, the arresting officer was dumbstruck as to why any of this happened in the first place, and the woman was apparently straightforward about the fact that she was shaving, and yet, because human psychology demands to make sense out of the senseless, he asked her quite simply why she didn't just hit the brakes when she saw the SUV in front of her, to which she answered, quote, "I told you, I was shaving," end quote. The trooper on the scene would later say, quote, "If I wasn't there, I wouldn't have believed it. About 10 years ago, I stopped a guy in the exact same spot who had 3 or 4 syringes sticking out of his arm. It was just surreal, and I thought, nothing will ever beat this. Well, this takes it." End quote. And ultimately, it's the kind of crime that makes you wonder why some people bother leaving the house if every second spent outside of it is just counting down to their arrest. But then, that's the contradiction of Florida Man. Because even when you do get arrested, it seems inevitable you'll be back on the streets in no time to Florida Man again. Of course, these are not the stories of all people in Florida. Let's make that clear right here and now. For being America's punchline a lot of the time, there are some truly wonderful people in the Sunshine State. I have friends there. I have family there. It's a nice place. Not all over, but that's true of the other 49 as well. Every state has its lovely spots. Every state has its nightmare areas. Its nightmarias, if you will. Each state has people you could build a civilization around, and each state has people who will make you question your faith in humanity. But Florida is unique for just how outlandish some of its citizens can get. Particularly when it comes to their cars, or other people's cars, or other people's trolleys or forklifts. There's a certain reckless confidence possessed by the Florida Man that, if bottled, would probably make billions. And destroy society in the process. But man, it would make for some really great stories. Thank you so much for watching. If you want me to do more Florida Man stories or more videos like this, let me know in the comments. And tell me your Florida Man stories, even if they're not about Florida. It could be any state. It could be any country. Pennsylvania man, Illinois man, Wisconsin man, Canada man. Let me know your wildest and chat with me in the comments. My screen name is Limited Time Roman. If you enjoyed the video, please comment, like, subscribe, share, press the bell icon like a Florida man pushing a deputy's buttons, and help this video reach more people so I can keep making these off-the-wall videos. But if you want to support us in the biggest possible way, Patreon is the absolute best way to help keep this show going, while gaining access to these videos early and ad-free, along with exclusive content you'll never see on Maine. Thank you again, and have a safe and peaceful rest of your week.